It entered the metal scene with aggression and speed, driven by four guys who lived on the edge, with everything cranked up to 11 and pushed to the extreme. Its leader, hurt and resentful, had vowed to create something the world had never seen, and the relentless barrage of sound and fury delivered spoke for itself. This is the story of one of the most important albums in heavy metal history. This is the story of Megadeth's Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, the underdog that ruled them all. It was 1985 and Megadeth was bound for the studio. They had signed with Combat Records and were ready to make their statement, to plant their flag on the Everest of heavy metal subgenres. The journey there, however, was filled with as much fun as frustration. When Dave Mustaine returned to California in April of 1983, he was armed and ready with all the music he had up to that point created. Upon meeting his neighbors, David Ellefson and Greg Handevidt, they bonded over those songs and riffs. They would drink and jam and get to know each other, while the magic in Mustaine's fingers left them awestruck as they gave life to menacing riffs. It was these jamming sessions that by June 1983 had given life to Megadeth. With Dave Mustaine on lead guitar, David Ellefson on bass, Greg Handevidt on rhythm guitar, the addition of Richard Girard on drums, and of Lord Kane on vocals, though it is said that they had been shuffling around vocalists, the band was ready to thrash. An unexpected development, however, threw Dave Mustaine for a loop. In July 1983, Metallica released its debut album, Kill 'Em All, and it contained his work he expected would not be used because he told them not to use it. This forced Mustaine to rework the material and distance it from that of his rivals. With the songs reworked, Megadeth recorded a demo, and while it was considered a rough recording, it was enough for the band to be seen at least as a match for Metallica in terms of mayhem. The songs were considered first-rate due to Ellefson and Girard creating a fast and talented rhythm section, and Mustaine and Handevidt offering up a killer twin guitar attack. The songs from the summer of 1983 included No Time, which was an early version of Set the World Afire, Self-Destruct, which became Mary Jane, and Speak No Evil, which was the original title for Looking Down the Cross. In the time after their first demo, the band cycled through a number of musicians, a feature of Megadeth that still happens over 40 years later. Greg Handevidt departed soon after the demo was finished, and both Daves, Mustaine and Ellefson, auditioned some 15 drummers seeking someone who could comprehend the changes in the music. They eventually selected local drummer Lee Rauch. This new lineup was completed by the addition of Slayer guitarist Kerry King, who filled in while the search for a permanent guitarist continued. Finding a lead singer proved even more difficult, and Dave Mustaine took the role himself to get the ball rolling until a singer was found. By mid-1984, Kerry King had returned to Slayer. As a three-piece, Dave Mustaine, David Ellefson, and Lee Rauch recorded a 3-song demo. Last Rites, as they called it, was engineered by Carrot Faye, a friend of both Daves, and released on March 9, 1984. It featured early versions of Last Rites, Love to Death, The Skull Beneath the Skin, and Mechanics. The end of that year saw the addition of drummer Gar Samuelson, guitarist Chris Poland, and the signing of their record deal with the New York-based independent label Combat Records. This deal, it is said, became a reality because of the strength of the Last Rites demo. Hello friends, I want to take a few seconds before continuing with the story of Killing Is My Business to thank you for being here, for joining us as we submerge ourselves in the history of a band that is very dear to our hearts. If you like what you've heard so far, please subscribe and share with those whom you think would like it too. There is a lot more to come, both in what remains of this presentation as well as future productions, so stay tuned and thanks again. Ready to announce to the world that Megadeth had arrived, the band received a budget of $8,000 from Combat Records and headed to Indigo Ranch Studio in Malibu, California. It was a state-of-the-art facility where they recorded between December 1984 and January 1985. And as much as the experience was both adventurous and educational, it was also fraught with challenges that would ultimately affect the final product. The process was marked by determination and a sense of urgency, as Dave Mustaine had the clear vision of creating a sound that outperformed in speed and aggressiveness anything that had come before it. This, of course, meant that he was in total control, a reality that was apparent since well before there was an album to record. In the fall of 1983, when Metallica had just released their debut album, Kill 'Em All, Mustaine received a letter from a fan expressing hopes that Megadeth's music would be a lot faster than what Metallica had just released. The next day, he sped up all the songs by at least 20 to 40 beats per minute. This is how Mustaine reworked the songs to distance the band from his rivals. Back in the studio, this new reality raised the bar for all involved. David Ellefson went from playing bass with his fingers to playing with a pick in order to, as he says, really nail the pocket better. Chris Poland found the rhythm parts hard to play. Luckily, Gar Samuelson had told him that those challenges would keep him from getting bored. He had only been in the band a few weeks before they headed to the studio. Once the ball was rolling, it was full speed ahead. Both Daves and Gar recorded the songs quickly and in one take. While Mustaine handled the rhythm parts, Chris Poland's contribution focused mainly on the solos. And Chris himself has stated that he wouldn't have those solos had a friend of the band not pulled Mustaine aside to tell him that the lead guitarist ought to have more solos. Thankfully, there was no resistance to this plea, and we can now enjoy Poland's unique guitar style, which resulted from an injury to his hand during his high school years. A 200-pound oak door was somehow coming toward him. He put up both of his hands, and his left one broke upon hitting and breaking the door's glass. The lacerations were deep enough to see bone on his index finger, and severe enough for him to lose the ability to bend it. Due to nerve damage, he also lost feeling in his pinky. While the ability to create magic abounded, the tools to do so were limiting factors. Because money was scarce in every way, guitar tone was not a luxury they could afford. To achieve acceptable results, Mustaine cranked all the knobs on a Marshall amplifier up to their maximum settings and plugged in a BC Rich guitar which had a 25 decibel boost. According to Chris Poland, Dave would just crank that up and punish that Marshall. As for his own settings, he just took a Rockman and plugged it into the front of a non-master volume Marshall. In terms of tracking, which is the process of recording each instrument individually so they can be adjusted and mixed independently, Mustaine would dislike whenever Poland wasn't doing pull-offs at the same time as he. All this took place in an environment where drugs kept everything going. And so important were they that one day Dave Mustaine arrived at the studio to discover that Jay Jones, the record's producer, and Chris Poland had spent half the record's budget on cocaine, heroin, and hamburger meat. Naturally, this did not sit well with Mustaine, as they would now have only $4,000 to make the record. His anger led him to consider any hope of having a relationship with them to be shattered. He has expressed, "I was pissed. I was absolutely pissed." From that point forward, Chris Poland was just a player in a band, and Jay Jones's time was marked. Poland has stated that everyone knew he had a habit before he joined the band, and that they were all doing $80 to $100 worth of heroin per day. He also said that the drugs were no impediment. They were simply something they did and that would help them work all day. David Ellefson has expressed that the tempos of the takes they recorded would fluctuate depending on whether they were high on heroin or cocaine. This mismanagement of funds led to the producer's dismissal, which forced Mustaine to take over production duties with the help of his friend Carrot Faye. As an experienced engineer and producer, he brought technical expertise to the project. He had a background that included work at Paramount Recording Studios and Record Plant in Los Angeles, California. His know-how helped the band overcome production hurdles that arose from the misallocation of funds. As per David Ellefson, albums take on a life of their own during production, and the song list seems to determine itself. Because of this, only a few of the earliest compositions actually made their way onto that record. The songs that did find their way in include The Skull Beneath the Skin, Looking Down the Cross, Rattlehead, Love to Death, and Chosen Ones. In January 1985, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good was completed and delivered to Combat Records. With that, one journey concluded and another one started. In the weeks that followed the completion of the album, Mustaine would make daily calls to Combat's East Coast office inquiring about the album's cover art. He was clear about what he wanted: a depiction of the band's mascot Vic Rattlehead with his eyes, ears, and mouth sealed shut. It was an original sketch inspired by the three wise monkeys and their embodiment of the proverbial principle, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. It was meant to express how he felt about religion, censorship, and freedom of expression. That, however, was not meant to be. The label lost the sketch and the album ended up with very different cover art. As Mustaine put it, the cover featured what appeared to be a plastic Halloween skull and a variety of dime store accoutrements. It looked as though someone had turned a beer can inside out and used it as a visor to cover the eyes. The blood looked like ketchup. Everything about the design smacked of amateurism. David Ellefson said they were mortified and that the artwork was supposed to be the DNA of everything Megadeth was about. But it did do one thing. It made us realize that it was truly us against the world. On May 17, 1985, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good descended upon mankind. It is one of the fastest thrash metal albums ever. Hello again, friends. I wanted to stop by one more time before we finish the story of Killing Is My Business to express my gratitude for your being here and sharing this time with us. Delving into the history of a band we love so much is a joyous event, and having you here to experience it too makes it even more so. As I said before, if you like what you've heard, please subscribe and share, as there are many more stories to tell and many more stories to come. Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good announced to the world that a new player had arrived, a faster, more technically proficient player that was a force to be reckoned with. It arrived at a time of political and cultural shifts where musical boundaries were being leveled and rebellious spirits were fully embraced by a generation eager for expression and change. The album explores themes of death, violence, and social commentary, and received strong reviews in both metal-oriented publications and mainstream music magazines. Critics praised its aggressive sound, intricate compositions, and recognized its contribution to the development of thrash metal as a genre. Having been distributed by a small independent label, however, Killing Is My Business faced an uphill battle in terms of commercial success and did not initially chart on the Billboard 200. This meant nothing to metal enthusiasts who were drawn to its raw energy and technical prowess, which was shaped by Dave Mustaine's own experiences with Metallica. Dave Mustaine had the clear vision of creating a sound that was faster and more aggressive than anything ever before heard, and that ambition is evident in the album's complex guitar riffs, relentless pace, and his dark and aggressive songwriting style, all of which set a high bar for those who would follow their lead. Each song is a testament to the band's technical skills and creative vision. The album came only a year after Mustaine's departure from Metallica, and by then, his guitar playing had far surpassed his previous work on the No Life Till Leather demo. He had become an inventive and innovative player, implementing new techniques beyond what was heard at the time. The riffs were complex, and the speed made them exceptionally tricky to perform with proper execution and clarity. He, of course, made it seem effortless. Was this the guy who wrote half of Kill 'Em All? Was he the guy everyone said was all drugged up and already washed up? He is that very guy, and he led the charge in the creation of a sound that was more confident and more musically diverse than any other. Mustaine would say that Metallica needed to be straightened up for saying he was a drunk who couldn't play, and the critical reception did not contradict. Critics described the album as a raw, rapid-fire thrash attack, pure, unadulterated, fast as lightning, heavy effing metal, and vitriolic, harsh, fast, and technical. Some expressed how good Megadeth was right out of the gate, how everything is performed at speeds that could knock the wind out of any fan of the genre, how Mustaine must have had a lot of pent-up anger to release, but also how they weren't afraid to slow things down to a mid-tempo just to make them even heavier sounding when they sped them back up. Mustaine himself has expressed that Killing Is My Business was so ahead of its time that people didn't really understand it, a sentiment that was echoed by many who said that the album predated the soon-to-be popular form of thrash metal by several years. This placed the band at the forefront of heavy music in the early 80s and helped it mold a revolutionary style of music that had few contemporaries at the time, as no one was playing music this fast and relentless. As with any album, Killing Is My Business is not flawless, and its major flaws lie in the production values. Sonically, it suffered from second-rate production, which led to a notoriously muddy and raw-sounding result. The drums drowned out the guitars, the vocals were buried in the mix, and some considered Mustaine still to be finding his way as a vocalist and songwriter. The band, however, more than made up for any deficiencies through a show of passion, anger, and technically challenging songs that blaze on at a furious pace. While Killing Is My Business is not Megadeth's best work, it is certainly their most important, as it set the tone for the future of thrash metal. Its influence on the genre cannot be overstated. It offered through and through textbook speed metal. The only thing is that there was no such textbook at the time. Despite what they had achieved, Mustaine has always admitted to being less than thrilled with aspects of the album that range from the shoddy production, to the slapdash cover art, to the behavior of the band while making it. In reference to the finished product, he has said, "I don't know what was more disappointing, the artwork or the way the album turned out musically. But I really didn't know the nuances that were involved in making a record, like mastering and all that stuff. And sadly, I didn't have the clout at the time to pull rank and say, look, I want to use a better this or better that. And probably the most important thing was I didn't have the experience in the studio, period, to say, guys, this doesn't sound right. You have to fix this." About the band's behavior, he said, "There are great moments, and then there are also moments that are sad, where you think about some of the things we went through as a group and the constant problems with other players in the band. As enjoyable as it was equally as awful because of the behavior." Ultimately, this was their first statement as Megadeth. To Mustaine, it meant that he has stuck his flag in the ground, and from then on, they were going out all guns blazing. David Ellefson has stated that it's an honest document of where we were at the time. Being homeless and starving, the drugs and alcohol and all that fit into the package. Life then just sucked on every level, except when we were in a room as a band. Those were the hours when you could just turn the world off. As long as the four of us were in a room together, there was hope, and that's what that record is about, the sound of hope. And that's part of the reason it's influenced and inspired 3 generations of metalheads. Two weeks after its release, Megadeth set off on their first US tour, and thus began the journey of one of metal's greatest bands. Thank you for listening to Megadeth's Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, the underdog that ruled them all. This was the story of one of the most important albums in heavy metal history. If you liked it, please subscribe, comment, and share. There are many more stories on the way. Stay tuned, and I'll see you soon.